In this video training, we're going to go over the HeliumTrack network map, and that's the map that we're looking at right now that loads on your dashboard. And it's really important that we understand what all the dots mean, what do they represent, and how do all of these pieces of information work together. So let's start by looking at the legend up here at the top. So the green hotspots are online hotspots. The gray hotspots by default are disabled. If we click here, we can enable them and we can see them turning on and off. The pink or purple dots are your planned hotspots, and only you can see that in your account. Now, the blue dots represent planned hotspots from all of the Ihub members collectively. So these are all of the planned hotspots that other Ihub members have planned, okay? And yours are the pink ones, so you can identify them separately. Now, the black and orange dots are very, very important to understand how they work, okay? So if we zoom in here and we see a lot of orange dots, the orange dots represent reserved hotspots. That means that someone has fully reserved that location for a free hotspot deployment with Ihub. It means that that location has passed our validation and they've submitted a reserved hotspot, and that goes into our deployment board, which we'll talk about in other trainings. Now, the black dots, and let's see if we can zoom out and find some. Okay, here's one. The black dots represent a virtual mining assessment that was sent out on behalf of another member, and that means that the person who received that virtual mining assessment report has received the email and they have opened up the report. And in the previous couple trainings, we talked about the 24-hour countdown that occurs when someone opens up a virtual mining assessment report. And what that virtually means is that real estate, that location is locked for 24 hours, which gives the person who received a virtual mining assessment report the opportunity to follow through with that process. And in that 24-hour period, no one else is able to send a virtual mining assessment report or reserve a hotspot within a surrounding area of that location. The whole goal here for us and our intelligence process is to properly plan hotspots so that they're not on top of each other. Now, that brings me back to my point with the blue and the pink dots. Now, I want to be very clear that the blue dots do not hold any value. They are free planning dots. That means these are planned hotspots. They don't necessarily, in order to save a planned hotspot, need to pass validation. So you can create a list of 100 planned hotspots, okay, and they don't have to they don't have to pass the validation in order to save them on the map. But in order to send a virtual mining assessment report and for someone to be able to come in and reserve a hotspot in that area, it will need to pass validation. And that's why we see a lot of the blue dots and pink dots on top of each other, because they don't necessarily mean anything. They're not reserving real estate. They're not reserving a miner. It's just an initial plan to send out a virtual mining assessment report or a way to help you visualize everyone you know on the map. So if we go ahead and actually remove the pink and blue dots, right, we can see a very nice even spread of the orange dots. They're not going to be overlapping on each other because those are the ones that ran through our intelligence process. So it's very important to understand when you're planning and you're seeing the validation working and it might decline or approve, it's very important to understand how this all works, okay? So we'll have other trainings on this, and we talk about this a lot on our live webinars, so I recommend you attend because we do some questions and answers where people might think that they should get a reserved hotspot in a certain area or send out a mining assessment, and I go through and explain why it may not have passed the validation and some of the intelligence rules and algorithms that we have developed in order to properly build out the Helium network. One other thing I do want to say is don't forget that there are offline hotspots, okay? And so this also is taken into account in our intelligence process, because when we validate a placement, we only dismiss an offline hotspot if there was no activity within a 7-day period, okay? So even if that hotspot is offline right now and it might be invisible because it's not showing by default, and let's say you run a validation process to send a mining assessment or to plan a hotspot, and it doesn't pass and you don't see any nearby hotspots, be sure to see if there was an offline hotspot, because it may have had activity in the last 7 days, and we have to take that into account. Some hotspots go online and offline. That doesn't mean that they're not there. It might mean that they have a poor internet connection or something of that sort. But we must take that into account with our validation process. So if you don't pass a validation, be sure to also enable this and see if there's maybe an offline hotspot there. Hopefully this clears up how our network map works and what all the dots represent. Thanks, guys.